speaking about, just demonstrate and we try to find a solution. The first point is that to understand what is going on in the French left, and I suppose you are mainly interested about it, you have to look at the background, the more broader situation in France. So I will make the first point about that. Then I will speak about the debate inside the French radical left. Then our campaign, and at the end, what's going on exactly. The political background is rather complex. 4 months ago, for instance, everybody would have said the second round of the presidential election will happen in May, next May, will oppose Nicolas Sarkozy, which is the leader of the main right-wing party. He's the Home Secretary. He's a very right-oriented leader. He's, in a certain way, he's running after the neo-fascist Le Pen, taking some of his ideas, mainly on immigration, with that formula he directly borrowed from Le Pen, which is a call to immigrants: either you love France or you have to leave, which shows how right he is. So every people think he will be one of the two final candidates, and for everybody the other would have been Ségolène Royal, which is the candidate of the Socialist Party. By the way, I understood that the words have not exactly the same meaning. In France, Socialist Party only related to the Socialist, only related to Socialist Party, which is a party which is not socialist at all. Against the big party of the right and the big party of the left, and whose main strategy is to promote national union, which means a new majority and a new government with moderate and clever politicians from the right wing and from the left wing parties. And now it's not absolutely certain that Ségolène Royal will be qualified for the second round of the election. So it is very difficult to understand that, but my explanation is that the success of Francois Duval and the center-right is mainly due to the political weakness of the Socialist Party and the difficulties of Ségolène Royal to look different from right-wing parties. And actually, between Ségolène Royal, Nicolas Sarkozy and Francois Duval, on social issues there is very few differences, and on, let us say, issue related to society problem, there is not much differences, because, for instance, one of the main points in the first phase of the Ségolène Royal campaign was not about social issue, that's the first point, and then it was about what she called fair order, which for everybody meant something like law and order. It's been more repression on young people in suburbs, it's been order, it's been state order, and things like that. And the fact is that she was not the favorite candidate from the SP apparatus, but she has been chosen by activists and by members of the Socialist Party because she looked like the one who can win the election. She was supposed to be the best in order to beat Nicolas Sarkozy. The problem is now that there is a big doubt about it, and as there is not much differences in the program, now Beru is considered by a part of the opinion as the best to beat Nicolas Sarkozy. So that's the main reason of his success. No, people are not discovering that he is a particular leader. They just think, perhaps, and even people from with left ideas, such as teacher, for instance, there's a he has a big audience in that kind of people. So we don't know what will really happen at the end of the story. In order to understand global situation, but also the situation in the left, there are some events to be remembered will happen in the last year. As you know, in 2002, and that's a big trauma in the French politics, Lionel Jospin, who was a former prime minister between 1997 and 2002, has been eliminated from the second round of the election, of the presidential election. In spring 2003, there was a long-lasting strike of teachers and huge strike and demonstration against counter-reform about retirement pension system, especially for civil servants. Almost a general strike, but at the end it was a defeat. In spring 2004, the left-wing party, mainly the Socialist Party, wins the election for regional council as well as election for European Parliament, because people want to send a message to the right-wing party and government. In 2005, as you know, there was a campaign for the European Constitution, and against all the center of power, all the political and economical elite, the no was a success, as you know, and the campaign was led by a broad anti-liberal coalition. In November 2005, you have rebellions and riots in the French suburbs, in big town. And in April 2006, you have huge demonstration of young people and also workers against what was called the CPE, which is a kind of first job contract with no guarantee. And it was also a success because, in fact, the draft has been abandoned. So this is one side of the French political situation and landscape, a situation of deep crisis and everyday deepening crisis, with a huge level of resistance against neoliberal policy. But frankly speaking, it's only one phase of the situation. And from abroad, many people think only about that phase of the situation. But when you live in France, you are faced to the other part of the situation. And the other part of the situation is not so fantastic. For instance, you have a very low level of day of work lost because of strike. You have a succession of neoliberal reforms that have in fact been implemented through workers' defeat, or sometimes even without any struggle against them. You have a very restricted membership in union, in political parties. You have in fact an uninterrupted shift to the right of the trade union leaders and of the Social Democrat leadership. So in fact, the situation in France is more complex and constructed than you can think. On one side, you have a long period where everything is quiet, no strike, no movement, and hard attacks from right-wing parties and bosses. And on the other side, you have very short periods of social explosions, but because it's very short, it means that the lesson of these explosions are not automatically learned by a large number of people, activists or sectors of the working class. That means that it is not so easy to change that moments of resistance and rebellion into a long-lasting political alternative. And that is the point I want to underline, because it explains in a certain way what had happened with the anti-liberal left and its division today. To say it simply, it was not so easy to change the coalition against Europe Constitution into an electoral coalition for presidential and general election next spring. In fact, in 2005, the campaign against the European Constitution was led by the revolutionary left, mainly our party, the Communist Party, a platform, a minority platform inside the Green Party, a minority platform inside the Socialist Party, many activists from trade union movement, from association, from the feminist movement, from the global justice movement, and also thousands, perhaps dozens of thousands of ordinary people with left-wing ideas who agreed to campaign against the EU constitution and more broadly against neoliberal policy. And of course, that is we have to build this is the basis. We have to build something on, but it is not so easy because all what I describe doesn't mean that all these people, all these current, all these organizations could automatically or even could easily agree on a common approach for general election, because it's not only being against something, against the constitution, against the neoliberal policy. It's about political power, the issue of government, parliamentary majority, state power, and it's a bit more complicated to agree on such a thing. And that's what, in fact, has happened. As you know, we have a very strange situation, especially if you look at it from abroad. For this election, we will have 5 candidates at the left of the Socialist Party. 3 candidates more or less related to the far left of the Swiss movement. José Bové, which is a global justice movement, and the Communist Party candidates. So it's a lot of candidates for more or less the same audience.
So who is the 5?
The Communist Party.
Who are the 5?
You have 3 candidates. You have Olivier Besancenot, which is a candidate of the LCR.
Yeah.
We have Arlette Laguillet, which is the candidate of Lutte Ouvrière, which is the other big far-left organization. You have Gérard Chivardi, which is the candidate of a small Trotskyist, well, let us say, frankly, sect, which is from the Lambertist tradition. Then you have José Bové, and then you have the Communist Party candidate. So it's the far left and the radical left is very rich in France, but of course it has something not very reasonable, frankly speaking. So for him is why we have that situation and that scattering of the radical left that was more or less united during the campaign against the EU constitution. The most shared explanation why the process for a common candidate of the anti-liberal left has failed is because the sectarianism of the LCR and because of the hegemonic behavior of the Communist Party who want to keep control of the movement. This explanation is widely shared because it is simple, easy, and in a certain way comfortable. And I'm not sharing that explanation, mainly because it is too simple, too easy, and too comfortable. If the only problem has been the sectarianism of the LCR, what would have happened? A united coalition and a common candidate of everybody from the anti-liberal left, eventually except the LCR, but that did not happen. If the only problem was the hegemonic behavior of the Communist Party leadership, what would have happened a united coalition and a common candidate of everybody for the entire liberal left, except the Communist Party. But that neither happened. So I think the more political explanation is that if the process for united coalition and a common candidate has failed, it's for political and substantial political reasons. And it failed, that's in our point of view, because there was and there still is a central political disagreement and a central political issue. That is, what kind of relationship can the anti-liberal movement have with the leadership of the Socialist Party related to the question of government, parliamentary majority, and state power? To explain what happened and what has been our fight and our behavior, it's not a surprise. We think our organization has a good program built on social and democratic emergency measure. But at the beginning of the process, we are perfectly aware that a united anti-liberal coalition cannot just endorse our program. And we were ready to accept compromise as long as this compromise were not opposed to our own proposal. And there were some differences between the different forces about proposal, but to be really frank, we think it was not that don't lead to an impossibility of having a united coalition. It was just unsolved question we can deal with, not an absolute obstacle for united coalition. We also think that we have a good candidate, Olivier Besancenot, which is very popular among workers and young people, but is also, obviously, our best known spokesperson. And for that reason, we know that we were aware that he cannot be the candidate of a united anti-liberal coalition. So we were ready to compromise for another candidate. Even after we announced its candidature, we have said clearly that we were ready to withdraw his candidature at any moment if a political agreement was found. But there was an issue about which we were not ready for compromise. Just one question, not a long list of problems, just one. And that one, as you have understand, is about a relationship with the Socialist Party and the question of government and the parliamentary majority. We have raised that question from the start. And we wish to have a clear answer about it. And the answer we want to have was, no, an anti-liberal candidate will not be member of a government led by the Socialist Party, and no anti-liberal candidates for general election, if they were elected as MPs, will neither belong to the same parliamentary majority nor support a government led by the Socialist Party. And the problem, the unsolved problem, was that we have never heard such an answer. What we have heard from the anti-liberal National Committee was very ambiguous formula about rejection of the hegemony of social liberalism. And much more worrying, what we have heard from the Communist Party leadership, which was the main political current of the coalition, was an attempt to unify all the left, which means unifying the party who have supported the European Constitution and the party who have defeated him, just like the CP or us. Of course, the Communist Party speaks about unifying the left on an anti-liberal orientation. But if you read the program of the Socialist Party, and worse than that, the program of Ségolène Royal. Ségolène Royal, by the way, is the only French socialist leaders who said frankly that she supports Tony Blair. In the French socialist tradition, when they are in office, the socialist leaders do exactly the same as your Labour leadership, but they have a more radical speech, and most of them say, well, yes, we are reformists, yes, we are social democrats, yes, we want to adapt us to the real world, but Tony Blair is too much. Not Ségolène Royal. Ségolène Royal has several times supported Tony Blair. So all that demonstrates that it's not possible to have at the same time clearly anti-liberal. I'm not speaking about revolutionary, but just anti-liberal orientation, and to dream about a compromise with the Socialist Party, which is a neoliberal party. And that's the reason why, at the end of the process, the Communist Party has de facto tried to impose its own candidates. Because Marie-Georges Buffet, which is the General Secretary of the Communist Party, in order to control the movement and to be in a good position to negotiate with the Socialist Party. So that's the real reason why there was no united coalition. Because the main problem, the problem we will be faced, perhaps, if the left-wing party win, which is what relationship with the Socialist Party, which also means what relationship with the government and its politics. Well, this question has not been solved. And for that reason, we have decided to stand for election on our own, with our own candidate and our own party. A few words about our campaign. So our campaign is mainly focused on two issues. The first one is social issue, and the second one is the fight against discrimination, against all discrimination. On social issue, our main proposal are about unemployment, with the demands for a law to ban layoff and redundancy, which is, for instance, that which means ban redundancy. The other one is about the defense and development of public services. That means that these ideas are very known inside the global justice movement. We consider that some goods and services are not just commodities, and something like health and care, education, culture, housing, pure water, and a lot of things like that are common goods, and everybody must have access, free access to that, whatever is financial resources are. And only public services can do that. And for instance, in France, that means the renationalization of all the public services that have been privatized in the past year. Privatization has been done by right-wing government, but also by left-wing government. Between 1997 and 2002, the brutal left, as it was called, government, has privatized more public services than the left-wing government before. So one of our demands is about social reappropriation, renationalization of public services. And the third point in our social program is about substantial increase of the minimum wage. Demands 1,500 euro, and a general increase of all wages and pension of 300 euros each month. And that makes some differences with the program of the Socialist Party. And the other big issue we want to be identified to is the struggle against discrimination. It means discrimination against women, it means discrimination against gay, it means also, and that's a big problem in France now, discrimination against colored minorities, such as black people, Muslim people, and so on, especially young people, those who live in the suburbs, those who rebelled in November 2005. And that there are not much candidates to have that speech about young people in that campaign. And our the main message we want to present to people is we are a radical party, we are an anti-capitalist party, and we are an independent party. And we think it's very independent from the moderate left, from the Socialist Party. And we think it's very important, because if the right-wing parties win the election, what will be needed for workers, for young, will be a radical party to organize resistance. But if the left-wing party, the Socialist Party, wins, what will be needed will be an independent party, because the Socialist Party in office will not implement politics in favor of young people and workers. So it's very important, and that from the start until now, that has been our main issue we want to insist on. And we think we can do it with our candidate, because our candidate is rather different from the other candidate, just like he was in 2002. Of course, he has 5 years more. In 2002, under our slogan, we put Olivier Besancenot, 27 years postman. And that was the difference with all the other candidates. He is the only candidate who really works. I mean, who is not a professional politician. Arlette Lallier has been a worker, but now she's retired, so it's really the only candidate. Now José Bové is also kind of worker, he's a peasant, but with this exception, compared to all the other, he's a worker, and he is again, although he has 5 years more, he is of course the youngest of all the candidates. For instance, Arlette Lallier, which is the other serious revolutionary candidate, she's now 66, which if you think that communism is the use of the word, is not the best demonstration for that. In fact, it was a real challenge for the League to decide 5 years ago to present a very young and absolutely unknown people. We think it was a good choice. So we think in that campaign, people, workers, young people, can identify with our campaign. Some of them, not millions of them, some of them can identify, not just on our proposal, but because our proposal are directly linked to what is our candidate. When he speaks about wages, of low wages, he knows what he's speaking of, because he himself is paid at 1,200 euros. So our proposal will be good also for him and his colleague in his post office. More seriously speaking, I think also more young people can identify themselves with him than with other candidates. Just to end, well, in fact, the situation of the left, all the left and the radical left, is not very good, because I start the speech speaking about the fact that we are not even certain that we are not certain that Ségolène Royal will be elected, but we are not even sure that she will be in the second round. And one of the reasons for that is that in the opinion poll, all the left, I mean the radical left, with its 5 candidates, the Green and the Socialist Party, all that together is under 40% of votes. So see the problem. It's very difficult to win the election with only 40% of votes. That's the first point. The second point is that the situation of the radical left is of course not a good one. It's you can understand. You have several candidates of the radical left. Everybody knows, for instance, that Lutte Ouvrière will never accept a united coalition, except sometimes only with the League. So a part of the dispersion, the scattering of the left, was written before the process began. But having several candidates, or having 5 candidates, it's not exactly the same thing. Of course, it's a big weakness. I've tried to explain the reason why, and the political reason why, but nevertheless, it's not a very good result. So I'm not saying that in that process, and I know there's a debate. There's a debate in France. There's a debate among the ranks of the League. There's a debate in the European left about that. So I will not say we have done everything the best way. I'm not saying we made no mistake. We have been partially isolated, and genuine activists of the anti-labor movement are now angry. They are angry against the Communist Party, but some are also angry against us, so obviously it's not a very good result. But one of the reasons why we have been isolated is because we are, and why some people are angry with us, is because we have raised questions that people want to avoid. And we have shown the difficulties of the process, while other members of the coalition have avoided to speak about the issue people don't agree on. Some of them have even cultivated illusion, for instance, about the fact that a common candidate of a united coalition can have more votes than the Socialist Party, which is a joke, or even have more than 10%, which is not the real situation in France. And we were the people who raised complex questions and the people who announce bad news. And it's not the best way to be popular anyhow. But we think we have to do that for 2 main reasons. The first reason is that we think the fantastic and victorious campaign that was led against the EU constitution actually need a political translation, but a real political translation that preserves the sharp division between those who have supported the constitution and those who have defeated it. And that means no political coalition with the leadership of the Socialist Party, even with the illusion of gaining seats in parliament or institution. And that problem was raised. And the other reason why we have that behavior and that orientation is that the question we raise is not a French question. It's not just something like a French exception or an obsession born in the bad brains of the LCR leadership. In fact, the problem of the relationship with social democracy, with the neoliberal socialist party, is a challenge for the left, not in France only, but also in Europe and at international level. This question has been raised in Brazil. This question has been raised in Italy. And the situation we were faced in Brazil, the situation we were faced, the revolutionary left was faced in Italy, is precisely the kind of situation we don't want to be faced in France. That means that we think, not just for the LCR, but for the radical left, it's better to debate and solve the problem before it happened. Because when you solve it only when it happened, it's almost every time a disaster. So the debate we had in front, which was a hard debate, it was not about reform and revolution. It was not about party and movement. It was not, as heard in the National Conference of the WP, it was not about the false opposition between opportunism and revolutionary purism. By the way, revolutionary purism is a reproach that had been rarely addressed to our party. But anyhow, it was not about that. No, it was just about subordination or political independence. And I think for the future of the left in France, and perhaps the future of the left elsewhere, it's very important to have an organization not sectarian, open, committed to build a broad anti-capitalist party, but who says there is a limit. That limit is not revolution. That limit is not all our program. That limit is just independence related to Socialist Party and so on.
Thank you very much, Francois.